So before we start the video, if anyone's concerned about my kind of mental health and things like that, I'm fine mostly. It's just work's kind of dragged me down a bit. It's bank holiday Monday, so I've got an extra day off work this weekend. So I'm sure I'll explain in a live stream or something like that what the kind of issues are, but I can't go into too much detail because I don't want to get in trouble. But the country's in trouble, and our leader of the opposition is quiet. Because in this segment, what we're going to talk about is Keir Starmer needs to mean business and battle the Brexit elephant. So this is an article from the Mirror it's by James O'Brien. Fair enough. It's an okay piece. It's just very short on what Starmer can actually do or should actually do. So we'll go through the article and then I'll give my kind of a bit more analysis as we go through it. So O'Brien writing, if you're anywhere near Dover this weekend, be sure to visit a Plants Galore garden centre in Plymouth. They're giving away £10,000 worth of plants because they haven't got the staff to look after them. So again, it's not just it's not just kind of agri-foods being impacted farms, but shops as well, that they don't have the staff to look after these plants. And the thing is, unemployment. Before anyone says, "Oh, we've got loads of unemployed people in the country," unemployment I think is around 4%, and the people in the country either have a job or don't want to do this stuff. So what do you do in that situation? Do you increase wages massively? Because in this case, they've had to give away £100,000 worth of plants. If you could simply increase wages to resolve that problem, they would have done so, because they're out 100 grand. How much will the staff increase cost them? 15 grand at the most? But they're out 100k now, because they don't have the staff. It's just beggars belief that people just don't get it. It genuinely does irritate me. With the advent of Brexit and the departure of many European staff from the UK, we are suffering the same problem as many other businesses in the southwest in finding suitable staff who want to work there, team leader Matt Pollard told the Plymouth Herald. They just don't have the people there. Without people kind of migrating, seasonal work or to live here permanently to work, they don't have the staff to, work in these shops. And what happens? You have to go without. Essentially, these businesses lose money, and that costs the exchequer a lot of money. Meanwhile, luckily, retailers, lucky enough to have enough staff, are increasingly suffering from a nationwide shortage of HGV drivers. We've talked previously about how farmers have struggled to get the vegetables out of the ground, and then struggled to get a lorry to ship them to processing facilities or to supermarkets. It's absolute carnage. The Road Haulage Association, a group we've talked about a lot, blames the Brexit exodus for the problem. We need 100,000 lorry drivers to fill the growing number. And the thing is, right, for people who keep saying, we need to train our own drivers, do you think if that's possible to get that many drivers in right now, do you think the Road Haulage Association wouldn't have done that already? Do you think they'd be like, oh yeah, we could get in all these foreign drivers, but we could just train our own? Yeah, let's do that. Obviously they've assessed the situation and realised short term they need to bring in sort of EU drivers to fill the gap until the new fleet of British drivers are ready. But what you also need to do is improve driving conditions for drivers, because people don't want to work in that industry, because it's a very rough industry. It's very hard work. You're in charge of essentially the closest thing you'll have to a tank on the street. You crash a lorry into a car, that everyone's dead. Everyone in that car is dead. If you're moving at say 20-30 miles per hour, rest in peace, F for respects, gone. That's the kind of vehicles these people are driving. Not to mention the fact that some of them have to unload the actual lorry as well, which is a lot more extra work to do. So for people who don't understand why there's a shortage of lorry drivers, it's very hard work for very low pay, and that's not good. No one wants to do that. You either have very hard work for very high pay, or at least relatively high pay, or you have easy work for low pay. That's how it's meant to work. But in this country, we've got it backwards, and we give people who don't deserve it massive pay. That's the top and bottom of it, unfortunately, in the UK. So whether they grow their own products or rely on others to deliver them, Brexit is hitting businesses hard, and it's barely even 7 months. And it's true that even if you have the staff to deal with everything, even if you're a farm that has the staff, EU or British staff, to deal with the farming crisis, or even non-EU staff, right? You don't have access to a lorry, because all the lorries now, a lot of the drivers are going to be working for supermarkets who are paying £1,000 on sign-on. who's gonna want to go to a farm when you could work for a supermarket who's going to pay you way more? That's what's happened now to these farmers, and that's an unfortunate situation right now. That there is a shortage of a skilled occupation, and what happens is the ones who pay the most can get the shortage skill, the drivers. And the ones who don't have the money, even though they're essential, farms are essential, don't have access to drivers, and that means we're going to be more reliant on EU imports, as long as we, especially only if we can actually get them to the shops. Like, it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. Harry both talked about how they can get their supply from Germany or wherever to the UK, but the UK can't get the supply of sweets into the shops. So could you imagine, right? German sort of hauliers or whatever, EU hauliers go all the way from Germany to the UK, right, to deliver stuff. You think that's the hard bit, but no, getting the stuff from UK ports or storage centres, warehouses into UK shops, that's the hard bit. That's embarrassing. Speaking of lorries, the government snuck out the news that this week that emergency measures brought in to counter the impact of Brexit on the port of Dover and around the Channel Tunnel at Folkestone are to be made permanent. Operation Brock or whatever it's called. They're going to be permanent now. Great. Like, that tells you everything you need to know. All these temporary measures that they've done because of the pingdemic and whatever else, it's mainly down to Brexit. That's why this has been made permanent. The changes were published quietly on the government's website while MPs were on holiday. It means authorities will be free to trigger Operation Brock, something we've spoken about a couple of days ago, I think, regarding sort of closing off roads just for lorries, so they can go from Kent into Dover with no problems. Parts of Kent, in other words, will be under a permanent state of emergency. Like, imagine Operation Brock being used for, say, 6 months in the year. That's crazy. It's going to be used for Christmas, most definitely. But that's just going to help stuff getting out of the country. It's not going to help stuff getting into the country, which is a problem. And as soon as we start doing import checks on goods coming in, we're even more screwed. It's going to cause even more problems, because you're going to have people stuck in the queues for ages. You're going to have lorry drivers coming from the EU who are going to be stuck in the kind of crossing between Calais and Dover, who are going to realise, I can't be asked to do this. I've been sat here for hours on end and nothing's moved. They're going to stop doing that route once we start doing import checks, because it's going to be an absolute nightmare. I think once we get the import system working, it's going to be far. If we get the import system working, it's going to be far worse than the export system, which is already chaotic. So thanks Johnson. James O'Brien continues to write, when I checked in with James Ramsbotham, this is a guy we've talked about before regarding his letter to Boris Johnson to save the northern businesses. Him saying at least a third of our businesses here in the northeast say Brexit is having a damaging impact. Then there's farming, fishing, hospitality, the border in the Irish Sea. I could go on, and if you listen to the radio show, you'll know that I frequently do, which is true. All of those industries have been hit really badly by Brexit. One thing is clear, the Brexit elephant is not just in the room, it's smashing up the furniture, alienating the neighbours, trumping away, while Boris Johnson sticks his fingers in his ears and Keir Starmer looks the other way. The last Labour leader utterly failed to oppose the Brexit fantasy, so quick dig at Corbyn there really for no reason, and now proven nonsense that propelled Johnson to Downing Street. If the current one doesn't find a way to highlight its dismal reality soon, he will be staying there. Like, what does that mean? He will be staying there. Are you talking about Boris Johnson staying in Downing Street? It's a bit of a weird way to end your op-ed. But point being is that James O'Brien in this op-ed hasn't actually offered any kind of solution for Keir Starmer to do anything. He hasn't actually said, like, what can Keir Starmer do in this situation. All he's saying is that, he needs to tackle Brexit without actually explaining what can Keir Starmer do with a very small Labour Party. My advice to him would be to figure out what he's going to do to fix the problems regarding heavy goods vehicles. I would say that a temporary visa scheme for EU drivers would be a great idea. That's something Labour could run on. Labour could say the government have talked about an Australia-based point system so that we can get in industries that have shortages, so they can have easier access into the country. Well, why haven't we done that for lorry drivers? That's something Keir Starmer could talk about. He's in a bit of a tough situation because he's trying not to alienate the mythical Red Wall voters who apparently don't care about all the problems we're having, just that Brexit is apparently a success. So, in this op-ed, it's a bit embarrassing that James O'Brien doesn't actually offer a solution, but he has talked about a lot of the issues with Brexit, which is great. But, he is right. Keir Starmer does need to tackle Brexit, but what Labour have to do is come up with a strategy first. And unfortunately, there is a massive lack of tacticians currently within the Labour Party. And that is incredibly frustrating. No one knows what's going on. They don't know, They couldn't tell black from white at the moment. They couldn't tell if the sky's blue. I don't have a lot of faith in these guys because none of them have any idea what they're doing. You know, what kind of Brexit would the Labour Party go for? Would you get an SPS agreement with the EU similar to the Swiss? Would you rejoin the single market and the customs union? What is your plan regarding this? Only then can Labour come up with something. And my idea would be to get those Farage clips from 2016 where he talks about being like Norway, and I would start there. And I'd say, look, was Nigel Farage lying in 2016 when he said he wanted to be like Norway? I don't know. This is what people voted for in the referendum. That's what I would do. But yeah, it's a bit tough for Starmer, but he needs to really figure out a plan. A coordinated strategy is needed. And he hasn't got one yet. He's been in the job for over a year, and he needs to figure out what he's about. What is Starmerism? You know, we know Corbynism, you know, he wasn't against Brexit at all. He believed in, quote, Lexit. So Starmer needs to figure out soon. He needs to really, it's big brain time here, figure out what you're about, pal. Otherwise, it's going to be potentially another Tory majority, probably smaller than this one, in the next election, and that's a nightmare no one wants to deal with. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.